The sun was setting on the vast prairie, painting the sky with hues of crimson and gold, where the horizon seemed to stretch endlessly. For Jack Whitmore, the rancher, it was a scene he had grown to love, but today it felt different. An ache lingered in his heart, heavier than the thick summer air. It had been 6 months since the passing of his wife, Sarah, and each sunset reminded him of the warmth he had lost, her laughter, her smile, and the way she could light up the darkest days. He trudged through the tall grass that swayed softly in the evening breeze, a lonely figure against the sprawling landscape that once felt so alive. Each step felt like a reminder of emptiness, echoing through the silence that surrounded him. The ranch had been their life, a place where they had dreamed dreams of cattle and kids, of harvests and hope. Now it stood as a shadow of what it once was, a place burdened by sorrow. As he walked, his mind wandered, veering into thoughts of what could have been. That's when he spotted something, a flash of movement behind a nearby grove of trees. Curious, Jack's heart quickened, dragging him from the depths of his melancholy. There, a covered wagon sat alone. The fading sunlight glinted off the dull surface, but it made his stomach churn. Why would a wagon be here, abandoned? With a cautious breath, Jack approached, pulling back the flap of the canvas. The atmosphere shifted around him. Inside, nestled among old blankets and weathered supplies, was a tiny bundle moving slightly. He froze. There, amidst the dusty remnants of a life once lived, lay a baby, no more than a few months old, alone and scared. Jack felt a wave crash over him, disbelief, then a rush of protective instinct. The tiny face was streaked with dirt and tears, tiny fists clenched and trembling. The baby's piercing blue eyes locked onto his, wide and full of terror. It wasn't simply a baby. It was a life in need of saving, a soul reaching out into the world, pleading for help. "Hey there, little one," Jack whispered, crouching low to meet the child's gaze. No answer came, of course, just that pitiful wail that echoed in the vast quietness of the prairie, a sound so innocent yet so heartbreaking. Jack's heart broke open. Memories of Sarah flooded him once again, her gentle touch, her unwavering love for children. He reached out a trembling hand. Carefully, Jack scooped the baby into his arms, feeling the warmth of life against his chest. The little one seemed so fragile, so vulnerable. It clung to him, and for the first time in months, Jack felt something begin to shift inside. Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, a new light sparked in his heart. Jack mused aloud, cradling the baby as he made his way back to the ranch. The journey felt surreal, each step guided by a force greater than himself, a new purpose that had sprouted within the garden of his grief. He named the child Hope, a reminder that life, even after deep sorrow, could bring something unexpected and beautiful. As night fell, the darkness wrapped around the ranch, but Jack's heart buzzed with a strange kind of excitement. He prepared a warm bottle of milk, using his wife's old recipes that had been tucked away in a dusty drawer. He could almost hear Sarah's laughter dancing around the kitchen, guiding him gently as he poured the milk. When he finally held the bottle out, Hope latched on eagerly, eyes sparkling like the stars above. Jack watched, mesmerized. In that moment, he realized he had found more than just a baby. He had discovered a reason to keep going. The emptiness that had filled him began to fade, replaced by a warmth he thought lost forever. Hope nestled against him, a living testament that life wove its own stories, stories of resilience and strength. Days turned into weeks, and the ranch slowly transformed. The laughter of a child filled what had been a hollow place. Jack painted the barn with bright colors, adding touches of life and joy. He found himself telling stories to Hope, sharing the tales of the wild prairie, of running mustangs and dreamy sunsets. But with each sunrise came the reality of the past, the lost love, the lingering grief that still cast long shadows. Jack struggled to balance the joy Hope brought with the weight of memories that sometimes felt unbearable. Each night, as he tucked the baby in, he'd find himself whispering to the stars, his heart open and bare. "I wish you could have known her," he'd say, picturing the love that filled their home. On one such night, while the wind howled outside, Jack heard a light knock at the door. It made him jump. He hadn't truly expected visitors. Most folks had stayed away, unsure how to approach a man in mourning. Hesitant, he opened the door, revealing a few neighbors standing in the doorway, faces lit with concern but woven with curiosity. "Jack," one said, her voice steady. "We heard about the baby." His heart swelled with unexpected gratitude. The ranch had seemed so isolated. He hadn't realized how much he needed the connection. The neighbors brought supplies, laughter, and shared stories, weaving a new fabric of community. They began to show up more regularly, offering help with the cattle, sharing meals, even teaching Jack things he had long forgotten. With every visit, Jack felt the layers of his grief begin to peel. He realized he wasn't alone. There were people who cared, who had their own stories wrapped in the arms of hardship. One woman, Mary, shared her own story of losing a husband, how the weight had almost crushed her until she found meaning in caring for others. "We rebuild together," she said, her voice steady and reassuring. "That's what life does." Jack began to understand the deep psychological truth. Grief might never truly go away, but sharing the burden brought light. With each stitch he colored back into his life, it became clearer that he was building not just a home for him and hope, but a sanctuary for lost souls to rediscover the joy they thought had been taken from them. One crisp morning, as the sun broke across the horizon casting golden rays over the dew-covered grass, Jack realized he had been smiling more. The lightness in his step felt unfamiliar yet liberating. As days turned into months, Hope's laughter rang through the ranch louder than ever, a sweet sound that melted the remnants of sorrow. It filled the ranch with joy and warmth, a reminder that nature had a way of healing even the deepest wounds. The seasons changed too, and with them, Jack watched Hope grow. She began to crawl, then walk, her tiny feet dancing freely across the floorboards of their home. Each moment became a celebration, an everyday miracle. Jack forged bonds with the neighbors, a family knitted by shared experiences and loss, only for their love to create something beautiful from the ashes. But life on the ranch wasn't without its challenges. One late fall evening, thick clouds rolled in, threatening a storm. Jack rushed to reinforce the barn, anticipating the winds that seemed to whisper warnings in the air. As the first raindrops fell, he noticed Hope gazing out the window, her face mirroring the dancing shadows of the outside world. "Don't worry, little one," he said, kneeling down beside her. "It's just a storm." But inside, his heart raced, every crack of thunder evoking memories of the past when his world had been shaken. Yet as the storm raged outside, something shifted within him. He felt a strength rising, not unlike the vast oak trees rooted deeply in the earth. He was growing just as Hope was. Together, they were braver than the storm, intertwined in the fabric of life they had woven anew. Finally, as dawn broke, the storm faded, leaving behind a world washed clean. No longer bound by his grief, Jack stepped outside alongside Hope, their smiles radiant against the fresh landscape born from the tempest. It was a simple moment, yet monumental, a precursor to a new beginning that filled the air with possibility. Jack exclaimed, pointing at the bright rainbow stretching across the sky, a bridge between moments of sorrow and light. It reminded him that even after the fiercest storms, beauty could emerge, often in the most unexpected places. In the days that followed, Jack found himself reflecting on his journey, the pain of loss morphing into the sweetness of love, like the rainbow that promised everything would be okay. Hope, now running around the ranch with laughter that rang like music through the air, became a symbol of resilience, a promise that life could renew itself. And as time flowed, Jack discovered a powerful truth he hadn't expected. Grieving was not merely about moving on. It was about taking the love once held so close and passing it on to others. Through Hope's laughter, he felt Sarah's spirit with them, gently reminding him that they were heralds of the life they had built together. So, Jack Whitmore, the rancher once burdened by loss, now forged a new path with each step he took alongside little Hope. They became a family rooted in love and collective healing, two souls intertwined in an extraordinary tale, reminding the world that from darkness can come profound light. As the sun dipped below the horizon yet again that day, it was no longer the oppressive weight of loss that hung in the air, but the vibrant promise of a future blooming brightly, one filled with endless possibilities on the golden prairie. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the wide-open prairie. The air was thick with the scent of grass and earth. Jack Whitmore wiped the sweat from his brow, his heart heavier than the load he'd been carrying all day. It was another evening without Sarah, another night plagued by memories that wrapped around his heart like a tight shroud. 6 months had passed since he lost her, but the ache still felt raw, like a wound that refused to heal. As he trudged along, eyes cast toward the fading light, something caught his attention, a flash of color in the distance. Jack squinted, his curiosity piqued. He walked closer, stepping off the well-worn path when he spotted it, an old, weathered-covered wagon half hidden by a cluster of gnarled trees, alone, abandoned. It was strange to see something so out of place in this land he knew so well. His heart raced. It felt like a ghost from the past, whispering secrets of lives once lived. He approached cautiously, placing one foot in front of the other. The canvas flap flapped slightly in the wind, almost beckoning him closer. With a deep breath, Jack pulled back the flap, and what he saw made his breath catch in his throat. There, nestled among shabby blankets and dusty supplies, was a baby. A tiny bundle, no more than a few months old, alone and drifting between sleep and tears. The child had messy brown hair and was staring wide-eyed at Jack, as if trying to grasp the looming figure before it. Jack whispered, kneeling down to meet the child's gaze. Panic and sorrow washed over him in waves, emotions crashing against the walls he had built around his heart. Every instinct in him screamed to protect this fragile life. The baby's cries pierced the evening air, and in that moment, Jack felt an overwhelming rush of tenderness, mixed with fear. How could someone leave a child in such a place? The weight of the world seemed to settle on his shoulders as he carefully scooped the baby into his arms. The warmth against his chest felt like an electric jolt through his grief-stricken heart, igniting something he thought long extinguished. He murmured, cradling the infant close. Suddenly, he remembered Sarah's dreams of a family. He could almost hear her voice echoing in his mind, full of laughter and promise. He named the child Hope, a name that blossomed in his heart like wildflowers breaking through concrete. He rushed back to the ranch, his pace quickening. The familiar path transformed before him. Each step seemed to pulse with newfound purpose. As he entered the house, the warmth that filled it felt different now, alive with potential. Just days before, it had echoed hollowly. Jack prepared a bottle of milk, his hands trembling slightly as memories of Sarah's gentle touch danced through his mind. "Here you go, little one," he said softly, offering the bottle. Hope latched on eagerly, the tiny face lighting up in a way that melted Jack's heart. It was as though the simple act of care ignited a flame of life within him, flickering waves of warmth dispelling the cold grip of loneliness. As night fell, the ranch took on a different hue. With every coo and gurgle from Hope, Jack felt a weight lifting. The shadows that had swirled around his heart lightened with each laugh. Days turned into weeks, and with every sunrise came laughter, a sound that echoed through the halls, filling the void he had known for far too long. But amid the joy lurked the specter of his grief. Jack struggled to reconcile the pain of losing Sarah with the joy of raising Hope. Each smile from the baby was a reminder of the dreams they had shared, dreams that now felt bittersweet. There were mornings when Jack woke up and wished for just one moment with his wife. The ache would grind into his chest like a relentless storm. One night, after rocking Hope to sleep, Jack sat outside under the sprawling stars. The vastness of the sky felt suffocating, the silent cosmos holding onto secrets he could never uncover. "I wish you could have known her," he whispered to the stars. With the passing days, Jack noticed the changes around him. His ranch began to thrive again, but it was different. It wasn't just the cattle or the fields that flourished. It was love, simple and profound. Hope became the heartbeat of the place, the laughter that echoed past the sadness of loss. He began to open up to the world around him, inviting neighbors back into his life, finally letting their warmth seep into his forlorn heart. One sunny afternoon, the door creaked open, revealing a neighbor, Mary, with her easy smile and warm pies. "I heard you could use a bit of help," she said, her eyes sparkling with kindness. Jack didn't know what to say, but something inside him recognized the offer, a lifeline thrown when all seemed lost. In the coming weeks, Mary became a steady presence, sharing stories over coffee, laughter scattering through the house like sunlight. Jack felt lighter. The walls that had once felt like they were closing in began to dissolve. He discovered the comfort of shared meals and laughter. Hope reveled in the attention, her giggles dancing on the air. With every visit, the ranch came back to life, not just as a homestead but as a community. But with this newfound warmth came echoes of the past, the grief that still loomed. One crisp autumn evening, as leaves swirled like golden confetti outside, Jack sat in the rocking chair that Sarah had loved. Hope was nestled against him, her soft breathing a melody, but a storm brewed within him. He asked the quiet room, his voice barely above a whisper. It's a common struggle, one so many face clinging to what was once cherished, battling grief as though it were a wild animal waiting to strike. It was then that he realized, through the eyes of Hope, that he wasn't losing Sarah, he was carrying her with him. Each laugh from Hope was a whisper of Sarah's spirit-echoing love, a reminder that life didn't end with death, it simply transformed. Jack looked down at Hope, who smiled back, a pure reflection of the happiness that had been reignited within him. Days turned to months, and winter wrapped its icy arms around the ranch. Yet, in the midst of the quiet, hope blossomed. Jack watched as she took her first steps, wobbling on uncertain legs, only to fall into a fit of giggles. Each moment became a celebration, a reminder that life in all its uncertainty was a gift. One evening, as snow blanketed the world outside, Jack found himself lost in thought. He sat at the old wooden table, a steaming bowl of soup in front of him, marking the same spot he shared countless meals with Sarah. But now, as he observed the twinkle in Hope's eyes, he felt something shift again, a deep urge to honor her memory. "Let's create something, Hope," he said, a newfound determination igniting within him. They began a garden, tiny hands digging into the earth, planting seeds of flowers that would bloom in the warmth of spring. As they worked together, Jack narrated stories, weaving tales that kept Sarah alive in each whispered word. The garden became a sanctuary, a bridge connecting the past and present. Families from the neighboring ranches began to come, intrigued by Jack's bravery. Shared laughter replaced the silence, joy echoing louder, reshaping the world around them. But life, with all its unpredictability, threw challenges their way. A fierce storm rolled in one night, throwing Jack into a tizzy. He fortified the barn, eyes flickering anxiously toward the door through the howling wind. Inside, Hope slept soundly, unaware of the raging world outside. "Stay strong, sweetheart," Jack whispered, pulling her closer. And those words became his mantra, piercing like a beacon through the darkness. As the first rays of sunlight broke the next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a shimmering landscape. The world felt new. Jack held Hope up to the window, their eyes wide as they took in the sight. He breathed. In the days to follow, Jack began to see the storm not as an obstacle, but as a process, a necessary part of life that paved the way for growth. As Hope flourished, so did Jack. They forged a bond that was testament to resilience, stitching their lives together like a quilt of love intertwined with loss. Yet, the shadows of grief still lingered, but Jack realized something profound. It was okay. It was okay to feel sadness alongside happiness, to let memories of Sarah dance in his mind while embracing his new life with hope. Years trickled by, and the ranch thrived, often filled with visitors celebrating life, joy spilling over the boundaries of grief. Jack walked deeper into the embrace of love, carrying Hope beside him, filling their home with the laughter and light Sarah would have adored. Time, relentless as it was, proved to be a gentle healer. Jack painted over the remnants of sorrow with memories of love and happiness, understanding that every tragedy could ignite something beautiful. Hope made him whole again, not just as a father, but as a man learning to embrace all the complexities of life. And on quiet, starry nights when the world lay calm, Jack would sit with Hope in his arms under the brilliant sky. They would gaze into the vast unknown, remembering Sarah in the simplest of ways, feeling her presence wrapped around them like the gentle wind that whispered through the prairie. Together, they forged a new story, a rich tapestry woven with loss but brightened with love. Two souls intertwined, dancing through the challenges and celebrations of life, proof that from the depths of tragedy, hope could bloom again. The wind howled across the prairie, carrying with it the weight of unspoken grief. Jack Whitmore stood at the edge of his ranch, his silhouette outlined against the fading light of the setting sun. It had been a year since Sarah, his beloved wife, had passed. Her laughter, once a melody that filled every corner of their home, now echoed only in his memory. The emptiness that lingered felt as wide as the sky above, a vast space where love once thrived. That evening, Jack moved about the familiar landscape, feeling the dust swirl around him, an unwelcome reminder of how dry everything had become. The cattle were restless, and as he checked the fences, a knot of worry twisted in his gut. The drought had tightened its grip, draining the life from the land and leaving him even more isolated. It felt like nature was echoing his internal struggle, a world stripped bare and struggling to survive. But as he worked under the swollen clouds threatening rain, something caught his eye out by the grove. A flash of color, a hint of movement beneath the gnarled branches, the sort of thing that shouldn't be there. Curiosity tugged at him, urging him to investigate. Jack stepped carefully through the tall grass, every crackle underfoot amplified in the stillness. When he reached the old covered wagon, he paused. There was a strange feeling in the air, a sense that he had stumbled upon something profound yet unsettling. The wagon was worn, paint chipped and faded, yet it still held secrets. With hesitant hands, Jack tugged back the canvas flap and was met with a sight that would forever change the course of his life. Inside, cradled in worn blankets, was a baby, a tiny infant, possibly just a few months old, alone and bewildered. The child squirmed slightly, dark eyes locking onto Jack's with a combination of fear and yearning. Jack's heart raced as he crouched low, squinting into the dim light. He breathed, disbelief flooding his senses. The baby's cries rang out sharply, slicing through the stillness, and with it came a rush of instinct, a powerful urge to protect this vulnerable life. He reached in gently, wrapping the baby in his arms. The warmth radiated through the cold grip of despair that had clung to him for so long. For an instant, he felt a flicker of hope, a small flame igniting against the shadows. "It's all right, little one," he whispered, feeling tears prick at the corners of his eyes. Jack named the baby Hope, a name that blossomed in his heart like a flower emerging from the dry ground. The trek back to the ranch felt surreal, each step heavy with uncertainty yet lighter with the promise of new beginnings. As he crossed the threshold of his home, hope nestled against him, the emptiness in the house transformed. Night fell, and as Jack prepared a warm bottle, echoes of laughter filled his memories, Sarah's vibrant voice dancing through the air, her dreams of family guiding him. For a moment he could almost sense her presence, a whisper of love enveloping him. He held the bottle to her lips, heart swelling as she latched on eagerly. Jack watched the innocence of her tiny face, feeling a warmth spread through the hollowness that had taken root in his heart. Days became weeks, and the ranch began to breathe again. Hope's giggles replaced the silence, ringing like music through the stark emptiness. Jack painted the barn bright colors, hung wind chimes, simple things that brought life and laughter back to the place that had once held his dreams with Sarah. Each time he looked at Hope, he felt her joy seep into the cracks of his grief. Yet even as joy flourished, the shadows of sorrow lingered. Jack found himself lost in memories of Sarah late at night, battling the darkness that crept over him like a heavy blanket. Those moments were punctuated with guilt. How could he feel happy when she was gone? One night, after rocking Hope to sleep, Jack sat alone on the porch, letting the chill of the evening creep in. He gazed up at the stars, their brilliance a stark reminder of the emptiness below. "I wish you could have known her," he whispered to the night. It was during one of those long, lonely nights that a knock at the door broke the silence. Jack startled, glancing toward the sound. Visitors were rare these days, most folks unsure of how to approach a man lost in grief. But out in the glow of the porch lantern stood Mary, a neighbor, with a warm smile and a basket of bread. "I thought you could use some company," she said, her eyes filled with kindness. It was a small gesture, but it burned brightly against the darkness surrounding him. Jack welcomed her inside, and that simple act of sharing carried the weight of an unspoken connection. As they sat together, he found himself talking about Hope, about the joy she had brought, about his memories of Sarah. Mary listened intently, weaving in her own stories of loss and healing, offering Jack a glimpse of what rebuilding a life could look like. With each shared moment, Jack felt the walls around his heart beginning to crumble. Mary became a regular visitor, her laughter mingling with Hope's, creating a harmony that resonated through the ranch like two melodies merging into a beautiful song. As spring approached, the landscape transformed, colorful wildflowers blooming between patches of grass, contrasting with the early rising green. The ranch felt vibrant again, with laughter spilling out from every nook and cranny. Hope blossomed, her first steps shaky yet filled with determination, and Jack couldn't help but feel that he was witnessing a kind of miracle. But just as the world seemed to settle, an unexpected storm rolled in one evening, dark clouds blotting out the sun. Jack watched the horizon turn ominous, tension creeping into the corners of his mind. Panic gripped him. He rushed to secure the barn, but doubt gnawed at him. What if the storm swept away all the newfound joy? Inside, the wind howled against the walls. Jack held Hope close, fear mingling with his protective instincts. "We'll get through this," he whispered, though uncertainty hung heavy in the air. Each rumble of thunder sent shivers through him, awakening old fears of loss. But as the storm raged outside, he found a strange calm settle within him as he gazed at Hope's sleepy face. In that moment, clarity washed over him. This storm was like grief, unpredictable and fierce, yet it would also pass. Jack recognized that life was full of storms, but Hope had come into his world to show him the beauty that could emerge once they passed. When dawn broke and the storm had cleared, he stepped outside with Hope in his arms. The air was crisp, washed clean under a bright blue sky. Sunlight glimmered on the wet grass, and Jack breathed deeply, filling his lungs with the scent of renewal. He exclaimed, pointing to a brilliant rainbow arching across the sky, a living promise that new beginnings could rise from even the fiercest storms. Weeks turned into months, and Jack realized the storm had not just tested him. It had forged a bond between him and Hope, blending their past into a hopeful future. One afternoon, as they worked together in the garden, planting seeds, Jack felt gratitude choke him up. "This is your home now, little one," he told Hope, who played in the dirt, blissfully unaware of the miracles happening around her. Jack reached for the seeds, happy memories flooding his mind, time spent planting with Sarah. The earth cradled them tightly, warmed by endless summer days. He knew that through the act of nurturing, they were creating something beautiful, something that would flourish despite loss. It wasn't just the garden that flourished. Jack's heart began to bloom with every shared laugh, every comforting embrace. Neighbors came by regularly, bringing dishes and smiles, filling the once empty spaces with life. Jack found himself laughing more, allowing love to weave its way back in. Yet through all the joy there were shadows. Jack still wrestled with guilt, heavy on his heart. On some nights as he gazed up at the stars, he would still whisper to Sarah, "I'm trying. I really am." But he began to realize that grief wasn't an enemy to be defeated. It was a companion that could teach him compassion, empathy, and strength. He learned to carry Sarah with him, to celebrate her through the love he gave to Hope. One bright summer day, Jack stood proudly as Hope giggled beneath the apple tree, tossing fallen apples with a sense of joy that was nothing short of contagious. The ranch, once a sanctuary of sorrow, had morphed into a space filled with laughter and life. "Let's make a cake just like Sarah used to," Jack said one afternoon. Together they gathered ingredients, their movements fluid and light. It became a ritual, baking in honor of Sarah, a way to keep her spirit alive. As the cake baked, the smell wafted through the house, a warm embrace that filled him with nostalgia. Jack smiled to himself, thinking about how every bite would carry with it a piece of her memory, a continuation of love. One evening, under the starlit sky, as they celebrated life with cake and candles, Jack felt a sense of peace wash over him. "Thank you for coming into my life, Hope," he said, his voice filled with emotion. With each passing season, Jack grew closer to Hope, their bond a testament to resilience. The grief they carried transformed from a heavy anchor to a gentle reminder of the love that had shaped their lives. Together, they navigated the complexities of existence, weaving a tapestry of joy intertwined with sorrow. The years rolled by, rich and full, as Jack watched Hope grow stronger, more independent, a reflection of his own healing journey. The ranch not only survived, it thrived, embodying the essence of new beginnings against the backdrop of loss. In the end, Jack realized that life was not just about avoiding storms, but about finding ways to dance in the rain. He had been given a gift, a little girl who taught him how to move forward, how to embrace the complexities of love and loss. And so, beneath the vast, open sky of the prairie, Jack Whitmore discovered the truth: grief could never fully fade, but it didn't have to define him. With hope by his side, he had woven a new story, a powerful narrative of healing, love, and the undying resilience of the human spirit. The wind howled across the wide-open prairie, sending dust swirling like a tempest. Jack Whitmore stood at the edge of his ranch, his heart as heavy as the darkening clouds above. It had been a year since he lost Sarah, his beloved wife. Her laughter, like music carried by the gentle breeze, was now a distant memory, haunting him in the silence of the evening. Loneliness hung over him like a dark cloud, a constant companion in the dusk light. But that evening, everything changed. As Jack made his way toward the barn, surveying the land that felt increasingly barren under the weight of grief, something caught his eye: a flash of color under a nearby grove of trees. Curiosity pulled him closer, even as trepidation gnawed at him. What he found rooted him in place. There, half hidden beneath a weathered canvas, was a covered wagon, its once bright paint faded to muted hues. It seemed abandoned, but something felt profoundly alive within. A surge of dread washed over him. Why was a wagon here? Who had left it? With cautious steps, Jack approached and pulled back the flap. Inside, nestled among dusty blankets, was a baby. No more than a few months old, the infant lay still, wide-eyed and confused. Jack's heart raced, emotions crashing over him like waves crashing against the rocky shore. Panic and longing enveloped him. He whispered, kneeling to meet the baby's gaze. The air between them pulsated with unspoken questions. The baby's small hands grasped the edge of the blanket, and Jack felt an overwhelming urge to wrap this child in the warmth of his love, something he thought he had lost forever. He reached in, gently lifting the baby into his arms. It was as if a flicker of hope ignited in the abyss of his grief. "I'll take care of you," he murmured, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. Jack named the baby Hope, a name that encapsulated the very essence of the possibility blossoming within him. The trek back to the ranch felt surreal. Each step he took stirred something deep inside, a new purpose rising with the sun. The emptiness of his home was replaced by the warmth of a living heartbeat nestled against him. In the days that followed, Jack found himself changing, shifting like the seasons outside. He prepared bottles of milk with shaking hands, recalling Sarah's nurturing touch, her gentle laughter guiding him through the motions. Every time he paused to gaze into Hope's innocent eyes, he felt her warmth spreading through the hollow spaces left by sorrow. But joy and grief danced side by side every day. Jack struggled. He found himself caught in moments when he was overwhelmed by memories of Sarah the sweet, soft way she used to hold their future in her hands, cradling it like a tiny bird. Those vivid memories were potent, yet now they were tainted by loss. One evening after a long day, Jack sat outside with Hope in his arms, watching the stars twinkle in the vast black sky, each one a reminder of love lost too soon. "You should have met your mama," he whispered, his voice laced with a tenderness mixed with the bitterness of loss. As the weeks passed, Jack began to forge new paths. He painted the barn bright colors, hung chimes that sang in the wind, and nurtured the garden, coaxing life to blossom from the earth. And through it all, Hope giggled and cooed, her laughter piercing through the fog surrounding his heart. But even amidst the blooming joy, shadows lurked in the corners of Jack's mind. The quiet loneliness would creep in at night, reminding him of the missing pieces of his life, the laughter that had filled the air, the warmth of Sarah's touch that he longed for. One fateful night, when the storm clouds rolled in and thunder rumbled in the distance, Jack felt a familiar weight settle deep in his chest. He held Hope close, listening to the howling wind outside as fear gripped him. What if the storm took everything away again? He knew he had to be brave, but that was easier said than done. He held her tightly, feeling the rhythm of her breath against him, the living pulse of hope and love, quite literally. When the storm broke, rain lashed at the windows like 1,000 tiny fingers. Lightning lit up the sky, jagged and fierce, reminding Jack of the chaos he had tried so hard to escape. Every flash of light pulled him deeper into the recesses of his mind. He was lost in thought, wrestling with old fears and fresh anxieties, when he heard a knock on the door. Startled, Jack glanced toward the sound, his heart racing. It was late and visitors were rare these days, but he knew he couldn't ignore it. Steeling himself, he opened the door, revealing Mary, a neighbor, wrapped in a heavy coat, her face aglow with concern. She called, her voice breaking through the tempestuous night. "I heard the storm coming." Mary's warmth washed over him like the sunlight breaking through after a storm. She entered and immediately made her way to where he held Hope, the tiny baby now sleeping soundly in his arms, her small form a reminder of the life that thrived amidst chaos. "I'm glad you're here," Jack admitted, gratitude blossoming within him, though uncertainty still clung to his heart. In that candle-lit room, surrounded by the distant roars of nature, a connection began to grow. Mary settled in next to him, telling stories of her own trials and soft laughter that filled the space like music. Slowly, those cracks in Jack's walls began to widen, light pouring in. She shared memories of her late husband, weaving tales of joy amidst the sorrow. It was a reminder that life could still carry beauty. The storms of life revealed the strength of relationships, connections that helped hold the fabric of daily existence together. As Jack listened to Mary's laughter and the way it danced through the house, something within him shifted. Days melted into weeks, and the bond between Jack and Mary deepened. The vulnerability of sharing pain forged an unbreakable connection. They joined forces to nurture hope, their laughter weaving in and out like a melody of life resuming its course. Jack marveled at how companionship could be both a balm for the soul and a gentle prodding to embrace the present. Yet, the shadows of the past still lingered. Jack still wrestled with guilt, battling late nights spent wondering if he was moving on too quickly, forgetting Sarah in the process. While being with Mary was healing, moments slashed through him like a knife when he thought of Sarah. One autumn evening, under a tapestry of stars, Jack gazed at Hope, who was playing joyfully in the grass, and felt a tear slide down his cheek. He whispered to the night sky, but as he watched Hope, her joy bubbling like a spring of water, he realized something. It was okay to carry both grief and joy. It was supposed to coexist, threaded together like a delicate tapestry. In loving Hope, he was honoring Sarah too, and as the seasons changed, so did their lives. With every passing day, Jack discovered that love could blossom in unexpected ways. Hope grew older, her laughter sailing through the air with the sheer innocence that could only be found in a child. One sunny afternoon, clad in paint-stained overalls, Jack and Mary stood together, preparing to plant a garden that was intended to flourish, a sanctuary of life and love. They worked side by side, digging into the earth while sharing quiet moments, peaceful and grounding. "This is going to be beautiful," Mary said as they shifted soil together, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Joy surged through Jack. The very act of planting became a celebration of life, weaving together all the cherished memories of the past with the possibilities of the future. Together, they planted seeds that would grow and flourish, a symbol of their journey intertwined. But like any journey, challenges remained. Jack often found himself wrestling with the fear of loss, of letting someone in again. Could he really face that pain once more? Then, on a particularly windy day, he heard the unmistakable sound of laughter ringing clear across the fields. It was Hope and Mary, their voices mingling harmoniously with the rustling of leaves. He paused, relief washing over him. In that simple moment, he realized how far he had come. Slowly, the barriers he had erected began to crumble. Guilt melted away when he saw the love blossoming around him. Hope deserved joy just as much as he did. Time pushed forward as it often does, and Jack felt his heart open wider. He learned to embrace the beauty in the tiny moments, dancing in the kitchen, singing off-key, or even sharing quiet mornings filled with warmth. Each exchange, each laugh carved a path through the darkness, creating new memories to cherish. One starry night, as Jack lay gazing at the fence surrounding the ranch, cradling Hope in his arms, he quietly whispered, "I'm learning, Sarah. Hope snuggled closer, her tiny breath bringing peace. Through her innocence, Jack began to see the world anew, the vibrancy of life, the power of love, and the strength that grew in the shared journey of healing. As seasons continued to change, the garden grew lush, vibrant colors declaring themselves to the world, each bloom representing joy and continuity. Mary often joined him, their laughter intertwining with the cries of nature, enveloping Jack in a warmth he had once thought lost. Together, they navigated the ebb and flow of life, holding the complexity of joy and sorrow in their hands, learning how to dance in the rain. Jack found strength in vulnerability, understanding that grief was not something to fear, but rather a testament to a love that had deeply lived. One bright afternoon, as the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky in a spectrum of colors, Jack gathered Hope in his arms. "You are my light," he said, feeling a profound gratitude swell within him. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, the world around them felt alive and bursting with potential. A sense of completeness washed over him, a beautiful acceptance that life carries on, weaving sadness and joy together into a crafted existence that is uniquely beautiful. The ranch became a sanctuary, not only for Jack and Hope, but also for all who stepped through its gates. They attracted friends, family, and even new neighbors. The heart of the ranch was nourished by love and resilience. Jack Whitmore transformed from a grieving rancher into a man fueled by hope, a father nurturing the next generation with fierce love. Together, they proved that while loss could carve deep shadows in the heart, it could also inspire an unwavering light. In the end, it didn't matter how long the journey was. What mattered was the grace they discovered along the way. Jack ultimately found that life, with all its heartache, was intricately beautiful and filled with stories yet unwritten, waiting to unfold in shades of love and laughter. The evening sky hung heavy with ominous clouds, pregnant with the promise of a storm. Jack Whitmore stood at the edge of his ranch, the weight of the world resting squarely on his shoulders. It had been a year since Sarah, his beloved wife, had passed away. Their dreams of a thriving life together, of laughter and children running across the fields, had crumbled into dust. Each corner of the ranch whispered memories of her, and the silence was deafening. That evening, the atmosphere felt electric, as if nature itself was caught in a state of suspense. As he wandered toward the barn, something caught his eye, a flicker of movement beneath the rustling branches of a nearby grove. Jack's heart raced. Curiosity pulled him closer, nudging aside the heaviness in his chest. He stepped cautiously across the uneven ground, each step revealing more of the hidden secret lurking in the shadows. And then he saw it, an old, battered, covered wagon, half hidden by tangled weeds and low-hanging branches. The paint was chipped and the wood was bowed from years of neglect. A wave of unease washed over him. Why was a wagon here, out in the wilderness, abandoned? Voices of warning echoed in his mind, but he pushed them aside, driven by that flicker of curiosity. Approaching the wagon, Jack hesitated, peering through the worn canvas flap. As he pulled it back, his breath caught in his throat. Inside, amid a jumble of dusty blankets and old supplies, was a baby, a tiny infant with wide, frightened eyes staring back at him. The moment felt suspended in time, the chaos of the world melting away. Jack's heart swelled with a mixture of emotions, confusion, fear, and an inexplicable connection that surged through him. He whispered, each word heavy with disbelief. The baby began to wail, a sharp, piercing cry that echoed through the stillness of the prairie. Jack's heart shifted, instinct kicked in. Without thinking, he scooped the child into his arms, the warm bundle cradling against his chest. The weight of the baby filled him with a strange sense of hope, a flicker of life that ignited something deep within his grief-stricken heart. He murmured, looking down into the tiny face, which was streaked with dirt and tears. In that moment, he understood that this unexpected twist of fate had given him a purpose. Jack gently rocked the baby back and forth, whispering reassurances that calmed them both. He named the child Hope, a name that blossomed in his heart. With every step back toward the ranch, his thoughts twirled in a whirlwind. What would Sarah think? Would she have loved this little girl as fiercely as he knew she would? When he stepped through the door, the house felt different. The air was thick with memories, but now it vibrated with the pulse of a new life. As he prepared a bottle of warm milk, he caught himself smiling, a rare occurrence since Sarah's passing. Jack could almost hear her voice guiding him through the motions, her laughter weaving through his mind as he filled the bottle. He knelt beside Hope, offering her the milk. As her tiny mouth latched on, Jack felt something unfurl within him, a warmth larger than grief. With each little gulp, she filled the emptiness his soul had harbored for far too long. Days turned into weeks, and the ranch began to blossom with the sounds of Hope's laughter. Jack painted the barn bright colors, hung chimes that sang with the wind, and even started a small garden. The once burdensome silence of the ranch transformed into a symphony of life, laughter mixing with the rustle of the prairie grass. Yet, as any parent knows, joy and sorrow often entwine imperfectly. In moments of quiet, the shadows of grief would loom large. Jack struggled as memories of Sarah flooded back, her infectious smile, the dreams they'd woven together. Every giggle from Hope served as a bittersweet reminder that it should have been Sarah enjoying these moments. One evening, as rain began to drum softly on the roof, Jack held Hope close, feeling her warmth against him. "You should have met your mama," he whispered. As the summer stretched on, the weight of grief continued to battle with the joy that hope brought. Jack found himself lost in thought one cool August evening. It was the anniversary of Sarah's passing, a day heavy with emotions like a lead weight in his chest. He wandered outside, cradling Hope securely in his arms, seeking solace under the expansive night sky. Each star twinkled brightly, yet it only amplified the vastness he felt within. That night felt different. Sadness lingered in the air like the distant rumble of thunder. Suddenly, he heard a knock at the door. The sudden sound jolted him from his reverie, and he turned, his heart racing once again. He briefly considered leaving it unanswered, but something compelled him to open the door. Standing before him was Mary, a neighbor from down the road. Despite the threatening rain, she wore a vibrant smile that broke through the gloom. "I figured you could use a friend today," she said, her voice warm and inviting. Jack felt a swell of gratitude. "It's good to see you, Mary," he said, stepping aside to let her in. Together, they settled in the living room, surrounded by the trappings of a life once shared. Jack felt the weight of uncertainty dissolve as Mary shared stories from her own life, tales of loss, resilience, and the comfort of connections forged in the fires of grief. Hours passed like moments, laughter filling the empty spaces of his heart. Jack watched as Hope nestled against Mary, enchanted by her gentle nature. Each interaction opened a little more light in Jack's heart, pushing the shadows back a little further. As the rains rolled in, so too did an unexpected friendship. Mary became a regular visitor. Their conversations deepened the bond between them, weaving threads of support and understanding that made both feel less alone. But as a parent, Jack still felt the shadows of his past. The weight of Sarah's absence became a cautionary tale, wrapping around his chest like a vice. Guilt would gnaw at him. Did connecting with Mary mean he was forgetting Sarah, the love they had shared? One bright afternoon while digging in the garden, he caught himself pausing, recalling the way Sarah used to teach him the joys of planting seeds, her fingers dancing through the soil with expert grace. "We are planting for the future," he said, knowing it was something she'd always believed. But now, he was left alone to tend to those plants and the emotions that came with them. Hope laughed and clapped as she played with dirt, the very essence of innocence and joy. Jack knelt beside her, realizing that he was not merely moving on. He was honoring his past while embracing the present. As autumn gave way to winter, the air turned crisp, and frost kissed the ground each morning. On one particularly cold evening, as Jack stoked the fire, thoughts of Sarah flared up, overwhelming him momentarily. He struggled with the guilt, feeling as if he was betraying her memory by allowing himself to open up again. Mary knocked at the door just then, her warm smile brightening the room. "It's freezing out here," she said, her breath visible in the cold air. Over dinner, the warmth between them intensified. They shared not only a meal but also dreams wrapped in memories, the remnants of loss softened by understanding. Amid laughter, Jack noticed Hope watching them, her eyes filled with wonder and curiosity, a child observing love unfolding. As time flowed on, Jack and Mary's connection deepened, progressively becoming a nurturing force in their lives. Jack began to recognize that opening his heart didn't mean he had to forget Sarah. Instead, it meant he was allowing her to live on through him and hope. The shadows began to recede as winter turned into spring. Nature awakened around them, bursting forth in vibrant colors. Jack's heart lightened. Filling with gratitude for the newfound family, he had created a bundle of laughter and love shared within the opposite seasons of their lives. Together, they explored the fields, collecting wildflowers, sharing giggles as hope ran through the tall grass. Jack watched, amazed, as his little girl blossomed into a sweet, fiery spirit full of life. But one evening, as they watched the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, a familiar weight pressed down on him once more. It was the kind of quiet that filled the spaces with unspoken thoughts. As darkness crept in, he felt the need to address the past directly. "Mary," he began, a lump forming in his throat, "I want you to know that I still carry Sarah in my heart." Mary reached out, squeezing his hand. "I understand, Jack. It's beautiful that she is a part of you." Jack looked at Hope, asleep in Mary's arms, and felt the threads of their shared story weaving together. In that moment, he understood that sorrow might always accompany joy. The two existed together, intertwined through life's unpredictability. As spring turned into summer, Jack felt a steady peace settle over him, a feeling of acceptance. He no longer feared the memories but embraced them as precious shards of his life, honoring them by living freely alongside Hope and Mary. They danced through the fields, opening their hearts, cherishing their little sanctuary. The ranch, once a place of sorrow, transformed into a haven of love, laughter echoing through every corner, a testament to resilience. Jack understood that the journey of healing was not linear. It was messy, complicated, but beautiful in its own way. Each poignant moment reminded him of how far he had come from, a grieving man found wandering in his pain, to a father reclaiming joy. By the time summer graced the fields with golden light, Jack could see Hope thriving, her laughter ringing like bells in the air. The ranch was alive again with warmth, the sunsets more stunning than he remembered, filled with color and hope. "Thank you, little Hope," Jack said one warm evening, holding her in his arms under the fiery sky. In that moment, surrounded by love and shared memories, Jack realized that life's sorrows would never truly disappear. They'd become part of the fabric of his journey, intertwining with joy to create a beautiful tapestry of experience. Through the tears and smiles, Jack Whitmore came to know that healing comes when we allow ourselves to feel, to love deeply, and to embrace every moment life offers. A new beginning had arrived, and with it came the understanding that while loss could carve deep shadows, a new light would always find a way to shine through. In the heart of the prairie, Jack, Hope, and Mary became a family, threading together their stories, walking forward into a future rich with possibility, love, and unbreakable bonds. Thus, their tale spun on, a testament to resilience, the weaving of hope through dark times, a journey towards embracing the beauty life can offer. The storm was brewing, dark clouds swirling ominously over the horizon, casting shadows across the vast prairie. Jack Whitmore stood at the edge of his ranch, feeling the weight of the world pressing against his chest. It had been 9 months since his beloved wife, Sarah, had passed, leaving a hollow void that seemed impossible to fill. Their dreams of a thriving life together lay shattered in the dust, and as the wind howled, it mirrored the ache in his heart. That evening, while the sky crackled with electricity, something caught Jack's eye, a flicker of movement beyond the windswept grass. His pulse quickened. What could it be? Curiosity gnawed at him as he pushed past the burgeoning storm clouds. Taking hesitant steps, he made his way toward a grove of trees where he spotted an old, battered, covered wagon, seemingly abandoned and half hidden by wild brush. Jack felt a rush of dread mingle with curiosity. Who would leave a wagon out here? As he approached, he noticed the canvas flap was slightly raised, flapping lightly in the wind. He took a deep breath, parting the fabric, revealing a sight that seized his breath. A baby, no more than a few months old, nestled among worn blankets. Time seemed to freeze. Jack's heart raced, overwhelming emotions swirling within him. "Oh my God," he whispered, fear and awe clashing sharply in his voice. The baby's wide eyes locked onto his, filled with a mix of confusion and fear. Jack felt an instinctive urge to protect this fragile life, a flicker of hope igniting in the depths of his sorrow. He stepped inside the wagon, gently lifting the child into his arms. He murmured, his heart pounding in his chest. The baby wailed suddenly, and Jack held the child closer, whispering comfort, though he didn't quite know how to soothe. "SHH, it's okay," he cooed, feeling tears prick at the corners of his eyes. The warmth of the little one cradled against his chest sent a shockwave of love and responsibility through him, something he hadn't felt since Sarah. He had thought he would be alone forever, but now he had found this baby, this unexpected gift, amidst an ocean of grief. Despite the brewing storm, Jack hurried back toward the ranch, cradling the child carefully as if she were the most precious treasure. Each step felt surreal, the grass beneath his boots damp and cool, the wind swirling about them. Inside the walls of the home he and Sarah had built together, every memory flooded back laughter, love, promise. Now, as he crossed the threshold with this tiny life, the atmosphere felt altered. Jack set the baby, who he decided to name Hope, gently on the worn kitchen table, allowing himself a brief moment to gather his thoughts. Every heartbeat echoed in his ears, reminding him that life was racing forward and he needed to catch up. With shaking hands, he prepared a bottle of warm milk, recalling how Sarah had taught him to care for newborns. "You're going to be just fine," he reassured Hope as he fed her, his heart swelling as she latched on eagerly. The home began to fill with the soft sounds of life, and for the first time in months, Jack felt a flicker of joy ignite within him. But joy was accompanied by an undercurrent of anxiety. Jack worried about what lay ahead. He couldn't shake the haunting memories of Sarah, echoes of laughter that crashed against his newfound reality. He asked himself, gazing down at the tiny miracle before him. The truth was, he had never envisioned raising a child alone. As days turned into weeks, the ranch became a different place. Hope's laughter cut through the heavy silence, infusing life into every corner. Jack painted the barn in bright colors, started a garden, and hung wind chimes that sang sweet melodies in the breeze. Each small victory brought healing, but shadows laced through the brightness. At night, when the world grew quiet, Jack would sit on the porch, staring into the inky darkness, longing for Sarah's comforting presence. One starlit night under the vast sky, he held Hope close, feeling the warmth radiating from her tiny frame. "You'd have loved her," he whispered to the stars, tears slipping down his cheeks. He grieved not only for Sarah, but for the life they had envisioned together, a family filled with laughter and love. One fateful afternoon, as thick storm clouds rolled in, Jack found himself pacing the floor of the kitchen, anxiety gnawing at him. He could feel the pressure building. He muttered, raking a hand through his hair, fearing the unthinkable. Just then there was a knock at the door. Startled, he paused, glancing at Hope, who was playing on the rug. He hesitated, wondering who could be visiting at such an hour. Finally, he opened the door to find Mary, a neighbor who lived down the road. Her eyes sparkled with warmth, and despite the darkening sky, she seemed full of light. "Hey, Jack, I thought I'd come check on you," she said brightly, a basket of fresh-baked bread in her hands. Relief washed over him. "It's good to see you, Mary," Jack said, stepping aside and allowing her to enter. The warmth of her presence enveloped him, and he felt an instant connection that reminded him of the comfort friendship once brought into his life. As they settled in the kitchen, Mary's cheerful chatter filled the air. Jack found himself laughing, surprised by how easily she ignited small sparks of joy. And when she finally noticed the baby sprawled on the rug, her smile brightened. She exclaimed, kneeling to meet Hope's curious gaze. "Yeah," Jack said, feeling a bubble of pride swell in his chest. "Wow," Mary said softly, her eyes dancing with admiration. The simple words resonated deeply within him. Mary continued to talk, sharing stories of her own life, weaving in tales of her struggles and triumphs. Jack felt layers of his grief begin to peel away as they connected over shared experiences. In those moments, he realized how easy it was to slip into companionship when wrapped in the warmth of another's understanding. As night fell and the storm brewed outside, he didn't feel as alone anymore. He began to hope that perhaps love could be born not only from grief but from connection. As spring melted away into summer, the ranch flourished with life, vibrant and colorful. Jack found himself more at ease, settling into the rhythm of fatherhood. He learned to balance the joys and challenges of raising a baby, finding solace in mundane tasks like changing diapers and warming bottles. Hope grew bolder each day, her laughter dancing through the air like music. Jack reveled in the simple, profound moments. The first time she took a step, the way she clung to him with trust and love. Those moments made the shadows of his past fade a little, blending with the bright light that hope brought into his life. Yet, the tight grip of grief still lingered, reminding Jack of the fragility of life and love. Late at night, when the stillness surrounded him, he would often sit outside and talk to the stars, still grappling with guilt for moving forward. One evening, as the sun dipped low, pouring gold across the fields, he sat on the porch, a blanket wrapped around him for warmth. Mary strolled up the lane, joining him, her laughter carrying like the wind. "Looks like you have a little heartbreaker on your hands," she teased, glancing down at Hope, who was nestled safely against Jack. "She is something," Jack replied, a soft smile spreading across his face. Mary looked at him intently, her expression gentle. "It's okay to feel happy, Jack." He felt a lump rise in his throat. "I'm trying to honor her memory, but it's complicated," he admitted, vulnerability creeping into his tone. "You're not moving on without her, Jack." She offered him a reassuring smile, and for the first time he truly believed it. With each passing season, Jack opened his heart a little more. Mary became a regular presence, her kindness wrapping around him like a warm blanket. They spent evenings sharing stories, laughing, and cultivating a bond that felt promising. One chilly autumn afternoon, they tended to the garden together, planting seeds for the winter ahead. Jack felt a sense of comfort, a place of belonging settling deep within him. "You know," he said, glancing at Mary as they worked side by side, "I didn't expect any of this." Mary paused, wiping her hands on her apron. "It's brave of you to allow love back into your life, Jack." Hope wandered near, her small hands digging into the soil, and at that moment Jack realized that with every seed they planted, they were nurturing more than just the earth. They were sowing the possibility for love to flourish again. Winter arrived, blanketing the world in heavy white, but inside, the ranch was warm and bright. Laughter echoed off the walls, and the air was filled with a sense of contentment, an understanding that family wasn't defined by blood, but by the bonds forged through shared experiences and love. One snowy evening, Jack and Mary decorated the tree together with colorful ornaments. Hope giggled, her eyes wide with wonder at the twinkling lights. As they hung the final ornament, Jack glanced at Mary, recognizing that their journey together had transformed his understanding of family. "Thank you for being here," he said, feeling the weight of gratitude settle in his chest. Mary met his gaze, her own eyes reflecting warmth and understanding. "You've made it easy, Jack." In that moment, Jack realized that he was no longer just surviving, he was truly living again. Hope's laughter filled the air, a reminder of how love could replace loss, even in the most unexpected ways. As spring blossomed once more, life continued to unfurl around them, bright with possibility. Jack found joy in every sunrise, in each new bloom of the garden, in the laughter that echoed through the halls. They faced challenges together, but with each hurdle, their bond strengthened. Jack learned to embrace the teachings of the past without allowing them to dictate his present. He discovered the beauty in stepping forward into a life that had once seemed impossible. In time, the ranch flourished alongside his heart. The family he had built with Hope and Mary became a source of inspiration, illuminating the path forward even when the shadows threatened to creep back in. Jack had found love again, and with it, a renewed purpose. One evening, under a canvas of stars, Jack held Hope in his arms, watching as she giggled at the twinkling lights above. He turned to Mary, gratitude overflowing from his heart. "It is," Mary replied softly, leaning closer, sharing in the warmth of the moment. In the heart of the prairie, Jack Whitmore discovered that the pain of loss could give birth to something beautiful, recognizing that the journey of healing is a collection of moments, triumphs, laughter, love, and even the somber whispers of loss. Together, They forged a new legacy that embraced the past while stepping boldly into the future. With hope as their guiding light, they would navigate through whatever storms life threw their way, united in love and resilience. Life's journey continued, a powerful narrative of healing, family, and the infinite capacity of the human heart to love once more. The wind whipped across the sun-baked prairie, tossing dust into the air like 1,000 whispering voices. Jack Whitmore stood alone on his ranch, surveying the vast, empty land that had once thrived under his wife's loving care. It had been 6 months since Sarah had passed away, and the ache in his chest felt like an anchor pulling him down into an ocean of despair. The cattle lowed in the distance, but the sound felt muted, drowned out by his heavy thoughts. That afternoon, a storm began to brew on the horizon, dark clouds rolling in with menacing speed. Jack felt a twinge of urgency, an instinctive pull to check the west pasture before the rain hit. As he walked, the sky grew darker, almost mirroring the shadows looming in his heart. Then something caught his eye, a flash of color peeking from beneath a cluster of scraggly trees. Jack paused, curiosity mixing with dread. He pushed onward, the ground crunching beneath his boots. The closer he got, the clearer the outline became, a covered wagon, old and battered, as if it had seen the passage of time itself. A surge of adrenaline rushed through him. Why would a wagon be here, abandoned and alone? Apprehension filled his gut, a twisted knot brewing as he approached. Pulling aside the tattered canvas flap, Jack peered inside, and his breath caught in his throat. There, nestled among worn blankets, was a baby, no more than a few months old, eyes wide and terrified. Jack felt his heart lurch, a flood of emotions crashing over him like the brewing storm. The infant's small hands grasped at the air, and an unnameable instinct surged within him, pulling him closer to this fragile life. He whispered, the words barely escaping his lips. Panic surged through him as the baby began to wail, a cry that echoed in the emptiness surrounding them. Jack's heart raced as he scooped the child into his arms. It's okay," he murmured, feeling the warmth of the tiny body against him, igniting something deep inside, a flicker of hope. He named her Hope, a name that felt right as soon as it left his lips. Cradling her against his chest, he moved quickly back to the ranch, his heart pounding with a strange mix of fear and purpose. The wind howled around him, but he pressed on, feeling the weight of responsibility shift dramatically upon his shoulders. Once inside, Jack set Hope down gently on the worn wooden table and paced the room, the reality of what had just happened settling in. He had thought he was lost adrift in a sea of grief, but now he had a reason to fight through the darkness. With shaking hands, he prepared a bottle of milk, recalling how Sarah had taught him the tender art of caring for a child. As the warmth filled the bottle, a flood of memories wrapped around him like a soft embrace, reminding him of how Sarah had dreamed of having a family. "You're going to be just fine," he said softly, turning back to Hope, who was still watching him intently with wide, trusting eyes. As night enveloped the ranch, he offered the bottle to the baby. Hope latched on eagerly, and Jack felt warmth flood through him. The emptiness he had known was replaced by a flicker of joy, a tiny light breaking through the shadows that had settled in his heart. Days transformed into weeks, and Jack found himself slowly adjusting to this new reality. Hope was an endless source of light. The ranch began to come alive again, the laughter of a child filling the once silent rooms. Jack painted the barn bright colors and hung wind chimes that danced beautifully in the breeze. Yet even in the brightest moments, the shadows of sorrow would creep back in. Jack often found himself lost in memories of Sarah, wandering through the house filled with echoes of laughter and love. He noticed how each giggle from Hope felt bittersweet. It reminded him of the future they had dreamed of together, a future that seemed stolen from him. One evening, while giving Hope a bath, Jack was struck by the contrast of joy and sadness. As he splashed water around, the tiny giggles filled the air, and he felt the weight of the past entangle him. "You should have met your mama," he murmured, tears welling up in his eyes. As he spoke, he felt an odd mix of comfort and pain. The months rolled on, and Jack found a rhythm taking care of Hope while trying to keep the ranch afloat. He learned to embrace the mundane, The changing of diapers, the long nights soothing a fussy baby, and the joyful moments when Hope would smile back at him, her tiny hands reaching out, grasping for connection. Yet the storm cloud still simmered in his heart, a reminder of what he had lost. One particularly stormy night, he sat on the porch, cradling Hope in his arms as raindrops hammered against the wooden boards. As the wind whipped around him, he felt memories of Sarah invade his peace, wrapping around him like a dark cloak. When the door creaked open, Jack turned, startled. His heart raced as Mary, a neighbor from down the road, stepped into the dim light. "I thought I'd come check on you," she said, her voice warm and inviting. She offered him a basket of fresh bread, the inviting aroma a stark contrast to the heaviness in the air. Jack felt a rush of gratitude. "I appreciate it," he replied, stepping aside to let her in. As they settled in the warmth of the kitchen, Mary's presence was like sunlight breaking through clouds. The atmosphere began to lighten, laughter spilling between them as they shared stories of the ranch and the challenges of life. As Mary noticed Hope, her face lit up. She exclaimed, kneeling down to meet the baby's curious gaze. This newfound connection filled him with warmth. It began to ease the burden he had carried alone for far too long. Days turned into weeks, and Mary became a regular visitor. Their bond grew, sharing stories, laughter, and companionship that slowly began unraveling the tight grip of sorrow shackling Jack's heart. He felt a connection that he hadn't realized. He craved a blend of friendship and support that began to anchor him to the present. Yet each night, as Jack tucked Hope into her crib, a flicker of guilt crept in. Could he really allow himself to feel happy again? The shadows of Sarah's absence whispered in his mind, lingering like a ghost he couldn't shake. One chilly evening, while sitting on the porch after putting Hope to bed, Jack gazed up at the stars bursting forth in the clear night sky. The vastness reminded him of the enormity of loss. "I miss you, Sarah," he whispered to the universe, feeling hollow. Mary arrived just then, holding a steaming cup of cocoa. "Perfect timing," she said, handing him the warm mug. They leaned back on the porch, letting the comforting silence wrap around them like a blanket. Jack asked, hesitantly breaking the quiet. Mary sipped her cocoa, considering her response. "Moving on doesn't mean forgetting. You're carrying Sarah with you, Jack. She's part of you, and what you're building with Hope is beautiful." His heart swelled with a painful understanding. Mary's wisdom echoed in his mind, planting seeds of acceptance that began to take root. Then came the first day of spring, when life burst forth from the ground, lush greens breaking the winter's grip. Jack felt invigorated, ready to embrace the possibilities ahead, to honor not just the memories of Sarah, but the love between them. With renewed energy, he sought out ways to bond with Hope while inviting Mary into their daily lives. Together, they planted new seeds in the garden, nurturing them with care, creating routines filled with laughter and love. Jack watched as Hope laughed, tangled in the joy of being alive. But just as life seemed to settle into a beautiful rhythm, tragedy struck. One fateful afternoon, Jack had gone to check on the cattle. The storm clouds returned, rolling in swiftly, dark and ominous. As the first drops of rain began to fall, he sensed something was off. Rushing back to the house, dread wrapped around him. He stumbled inside, calling out for Hope. Hope! The silence that met his ears was terrifying. He ran into her room, panic clawing at his throat. There she was, thankfully napping peacefully, but his heart raced with the images that had flashed through his mind. The storm continued to intensify outside, rain slashing against the windows like 1,000 tiny fists. He scooped Hope into his arms, holding her close as the darkness loomed around them. "I won't let anything happen to you," he whispered, panic giving way to fierce determination. As the storm raged on, Jack felt a wave of understanding wash over him. In that moment, he realized he would do anything to protect this tiny life. He was not only a grieving husband, he was a devoted father who would fight against the tempest to ensure her happiness. Mary arrived, drenched but determined, knocking on the door just as the winds howled louder outside. She shouted over the thunder. Jack opened the door, relief flooding through him. Mary entered, her presence a beacon that grounded him. Together, they created a safe haven within the turmoil, building a fortress of blankets and cushions. As they waited out the storm, they shared stories, voices rising above the thunder, hope nestled between them, oblivious to the chaos. Jack felt a powerful shift in himself. The grief that had once felt like a heavy stone around his neck was now a reminder of the love that had fueled his determination to seek joy in their lives. When the storm finally passed, dawn broke with a wash of gentle light. Jack stepped outside, the world glistening after the rain. The landscape looked renewed, vibrant, a testament to resilience. As he looked back at the ranch, he realized it wasn't just the soil that had been watered, it was also his heart. He had learned that love could spring even from the hardest of times, that joy could grow alongside sorrow. One warm evening under a starry sky, he sat with Hope in his arms, her curls bouncing in the soft breeze. He turned to Mary, who sat nearby, sharing the peaceful moment. "You've helped me more than you know," he said, gratitude spilling from his heart. Mary smiled, her eyes twinkling. "You've shown me new beginnings, Jack." In that moment, the weight of the past felt lighter, as if everything they'd been through was woven into the fabric of their lives. Jack had faced the storm, and together they had forged a new path filled with hope, laughter, and resilience. As days turned into months, Jack learned to embrace love once more. He watched as Hope blossomed into a joyful child, her laughter ringing through the halls, filling the once empty spaces of the ranch with life and warmth. Jack Whitmore discovered that grief, while often heavy, could transform into something beautiful. It taught him the depth of love, the strength to create anew. In the heart of the prairie, he had unearthed joy in unexpected places, built a family filled with laughter, and stepped boldly into a future brimming with possibility. Through each trial, he learned that life was not solely about survival but about thriving, allowing the past to blend with the present, creating a legacy of love. And in the end, he was reminded that the heart is resilient far beyond what we think possible. Underneath the vast, open sky, Jack had found his way home, not just to the ranch, but into a life where he could hold the memories of Sarah close while nurturing a beautiful new journey with hope and the love that had blossomed unexpectedly amidst the heartache. Together, they embraced life with open hearts, walking forward into each new day as a testament to the enduring spirit of love. The wind howled like a restless spirit across the endless expanse of the prairie. Dust danced in swirling patterns, driven by the angry gusts that swept across the land. Jack Whitmore surveyed his ranch, a heavy weight upon his heart. It had been months since he lost Sarah, his beloved wife, and every fixed gaze toward the fields reminded him of what was lost, a life that once thrived under their dreams. This evening felt different, crackling with something in the air that stirred his instincts. He had been clearing out the barn when he spotted something strange in the distance, a flash of color beneath the sad gray sky. Jack's curiosity piqued, pulling him toward the wooded area at the edge of his property. What could it be? As he reached the thick grove of trees, he pushed through the dense undergrowth, heart pounding. And there it was, a covered wagon, worn and battered, half hidden beneath overgrown branches and brambles. It was an old relic, something that belonged to a bygone era. But the sight, while curious, made him uneasy. Jack approached cautiously, his intuition nagging at him. Memories of Sarah flooded back, her laughter, her warmth, her spirit that seemed to wrap around him like a comforting cloak. As he drew closer, he noticed the wagon was not just a forgotten piece of history. Something stirred inside, a light capturing his attention. With trembling hands, Jack pulled back the worn canvas flap, and his world tilted on its axis. Inside, wrapped in tattered blankets, lay a baby no more than a few months old. The child's wide, frightened eyes met his, filled with confusion and desperation. Jack's heart raced as he took a step back, overwhelmed by the shock of the unexpected sight. He felt tears prick his eyes. He murmured, the air thick with disbelief. The baby began to scream, a piercing wail that shattered the silence and pulled him closer. An unexplainable surge of instinct took hold, compelling him to reach out. Jack stepped into the wagon, picking up the baby with gentle hands. The warmth of her small body against his chest ignited something deep within him, a flicker of hope amidst the surrounding darkness. He held the child closer, whispering soft promises. "You're safe now," he said, though he wasn't sure how. With a sense of urgency, he made his way back through the underbrush, the prairie wind biting at his face as he hurried toward the ranch. Each step felt heavy with responsibility, a mix of fear and fierce determination surging through him. Back in the comfort of his home, Jack placed the baby on the kitchen table, his heart hammering in disbelief. He looked at her tiny, delicate features and felt a rush of emotions: confusion, love, and a staggering fear of failure. How could he care for this child alone? After a brief moment of shock, he swung into action. Jack prepared a bottle, his hands trembling as he remembered how Sarah had done it countless times before. Those memories felt both comforting and agonizing. She would have known just what to do. As he heated the milk, the weight of loss clawed at him, and the reality of raising a child alone loomed like an insurmountable wall. With the warm bottle in hand, he returned to hope. He named her that instinctively, a light blooming in the middle of despair. Jack propped her up, watching as she latched on, her tiny mouth working diligently. Each soft sound was a melody that tugged at his heart, reverberating in the empty spaces that sorrow had claimed. Watching her, Jack felt the most profound connection, a bond that transcended the grief and pain he had endured for so long. As the baby drank, he spoke softly to her, sharing stories of the ranch and the dreams he once held. With every coo and burp, the shackles of his sorrow began to loosen, replaced by an ever-deepening love. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Jack found a flicker of joy. But with the dawning light also came a darkness. Each day blended into the next, and while hope filled his world with laughter, the echoes of the past hovered ominously in the background. Jack wrestled with his emotions, feeling joy intermingled with guilt. He worried that he would fail her, that he wasn't enough. One stormy night, as thunder cracked the sky, he held Hope close, her tiny frame trusting and warm against his chest. Jack's heart raced, the darkness threatening to swallow him whole. "Stay with me, little one," he whispered into the raging storm. On that tempestuous night, Jack's resolve began to shatter. It was too much to bear. The weight of grief, the uncertainty of his future, it all felt overwhelming. Just as the storm reached its zenith, he heard a knock at the door. Hope stirred in his arms, and an icy chill crept through him. Who would come calling at this hour? He hesitated, heart thundering in his ear. What if it was bad news? What if it was someone from his past, someone who brought whispers of sorrow? With a determined breath, he opened the door, revealing a familiar face. It was Mary, his neighbor, drenched from the downpour but exuding warmth and concern. She exclaimed, her gaze moving to Hope, nestled against him. "I came as soon as I saw the storm rolling in." Relief washed over him. Mary stepped inside, shaking droplets from her hair as she took in the scene. Hope, still nestled against Jack, looked up at Mary with wide, curious eyes. "She's beautiful," Mary said softly, kneeling to get a better look. Jack hesitated before answering, his voice shaky. "In a wagon out by the grove." The warmth in Mary's eyes deepened, understanding flooding her expression. She placed a hand on his arm, grounding him as memories of loss threatened to rise like a tide. As the storm raged outside, they shared stories, experiences of loss, moments of joy that flickered like fragile candles in the dark. Jack felt the heavy weight lift a little. With every laugh and shared glance, he drew closer to Mary, discovering a friendship that offered light in his darkest moments. Weeks turned into months, and as spring blossomed into summer, the ranch began to thrive, colors bursting forth from the ground, life returning where it had once been dormant. Hope became the sunshine that nourished Jack's heart, filling his days with laughter. Yet even among the blooms, shadows continued to linger. Jack found himself wrestling with feelings of guilt. Could he truly honor Sarah's memory while also embracing the new life they had built? Each giggle from Hope felt bittersweet, a reminder of all that could have been. One sunny afternoon, as he sat on the porch watching Hope play among the wildflowers, Mary appeared at the edge of the garden, her arms filled with handfuls of vibrant blooms. She called out cheerfully. Jack couldn't help but smile at her effortless warmth. "Thank you, Mary." "They're beautiful," he said, taking them from her hands, feeling the weight of his sorrow ease slightly in her company. As they sat together, soaking in the beauty around them, Jack felt the walls he had built begin to crumble. Mary leaned closer, her eyes reflecting a deep understanding. "It's okay to feel torn, Jack." The words struck him, resonating in the quiet spaces of his heart. For every heavy moment, there also existed the ability to cherish love and nurturing. The thought lit a fire within him. But just when Jack thought he was finding his ground, life had another challenge waiting. One fateful evening, as the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow across the fields, Jack received devastating news. "They've found the wagon," Mary said, her voice trembling as she spoke. "And they've traced it back to a woman in town." Time seemed to freeze at that moment, the air thick with impending dread. Jack's heart sank, a crushing weight pressing down on him. "No," he breathed, shaking his head. "But Jack, she could belong to that woman. We have to find out what happened," Mary urged, concern washing over her face. Jack felt panic rise in his throat. He couldn't let go, not now, not after everything they had shared. This child had become his reason to wake up every day, his beacon of hope amidst the storm. How could he face losing her? The reality of the situation crashed over him like a tidal wave, crashing against the dam he had built around his heart. Hope's laughter, her tiny hands reaching for him, it was all at stake now. "I can't lose her," he repeated, his voice breaking. Mary placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "We'll figure this out together." As night fell, Jack sat with Hope on the porch, the stars twinkling above, as the weight of uncertainty settled over him like a thick fog. He cradled her close, whispering sweet nothings as the truth loomed heavy over them. Soon everything would change. And as he looked up at the night sky, he felt a storm brewing, one that had nothing to do with the weather outside. Time was running out. With madness swirling in his heart, he made up his mind. He couldn't wait for the storm to break. He had to take action. Jack looked down at Hope, taking a deep breath, determination coursing through him. They would face whatever came next together. And so, with each beat of his heart, a new journey began, one filled with uncertainty, but also the promise of love ignited through the most challenging of circumstances. As Jack Whitmore prepared to fight for the child who had changed everything, he knew deep down that the story was far from over. It was just the beginning.